podcast guest today is Stephen Reed, who is on team for Ambassadors Football, a global organisation that connects people to Jesus through football. Stephen has been working for Ambassadors Football for nearly 20 years, and today his role is to serve local churches by helping them to run weekly community football outreach, holiday camps, and to participate in tournaments and tours to locations around the world. He also champions ministry partner development for Ambassadors Football, which involves helping those called into ambassadors and other organisations to invite spiritual and financial support. Stephen himself raised support towards his own salary using Stewardship's new partner account for linked workers as part of Ambassador Football's partner account with us. More on that shortly. Stephen, a very, very warm welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
First things first, just to get this out in the open, I feel like I've got a bit of an confession to make. I'm afraid I don't actually know very much about football, but if there's one thing I do know, it's often a religion to many people. So I'm really fascinated. When you first meet someone who's passionate about football, knows nothing about Jesus, and what's more, perhaps isn't even vaguely interested in finding out anything more, how on earth do you take the next step?
That's a great question. I think when we are, as followers, we're called to be like with Jesus, and we're called to become like Jesus, and then we're called to lead like Jesus. And as part of that, when we run any football event, our character should display his character. And so we'd hope that if someone maybe doesn't have an interest in faith, actually they look at us and see something different with us within the world, which challenges culture. So that's one way. And the other way is when we're running our football projects, we're very openly confessing Jesus, who he is, how much he loves us. And so most of our football events include someone sharing a Bible message or a talk related to faith. And we're very open about that, and people are always welcome and invited to come be part of the sessions.
Now, you've been involved with Ambassadors Football for a really long time, so this is clearly a calling for you. Tell us more about their work. You've already given us a little bit of insight there. It's wonderful to hear that the events you run are overtly Christian. So just explain a bit more exactly about how it all works and how you get to marry your passion for football with serving Jesus.
Yeah, so my life was actually transformed by God, but it was actually through a local football team. So when I joined this football team, I was kind of coming back to faith. And this football team really helped me, being alongside other Christian people who were following God. And so that really kind of encouraged me and my faith. I just know football is loved by so many, as you said. I think it was 12.2 million tuned into the women's England final in the Euros, and it was 19.3 million tuned into the men when they lost in the final. And that's just in the UK. So we know it's loved by so many across the UK. People can engage with it, and it's such an easy way to kind of build relationship with people, connect with people, to display God's character, to love them, and to in all the occasions we hope that God will open doors to allow us to step in with faith, with prayer, encourage them to church activities to see them go deeper with God.
Great. Now there's this support raising aspect of your work that I'd also like us to talk about shortly, because that's a big part of how we've worked together as well. But before we get into that, you've already mentioned a little bit about your faith journey. You sort of indicated you were coming back to faith, and being part of this team really helped you on your journey. Tell us more about your faith story, if you don't mind sharing. How exactly did you come to faith? Did you grow up in a Christian household? Be lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian household. So went to church and went to school. And at the age of 16, I actually walked away from church. I struggled with two lives. I had a church life where I tried to live like a really good life. And then I went to school, and I couldn't keep all I was expecting from church to school. Like I couldn't be good enough at school. And I really struggled with that tension between taking church to school. And it came to the point where I actually just thought I was better walking away. And so I left church for a number of years, and I actually became really unhappy with my life. And one of my best friends, he basically said I needed to go back to church. So he invited me back to this Baptist church that I started attending. And I just remember the way that these people loved me in to the church and were caring for me. And actually, they invited me on a missions trip. So it's probably my first experience of a missions trip. So we went to Romania, And at this point, I was back in church, but I wasn't really like following with my whole heart. And I had this moment on this missions trip of seeing these kids who had nothing, just enjoying everything, just enjoying being loved, played with. And I just remember I felt like God saying in my heart, like, I love these kids and I love you. And all you need to do is come to me as you are. Don't worry about doing the right thing. Just come to me as you are, say yes and follow me. And I will make you right. I will make you do the right things by my strength, not by your strength. And that was the moment where things just really changed. And I just said, yes, God, I want to follow you. And I came back from that trip to Romania, and I just got plugged into the church. I started following, I was helping at youth club. And that is when I kind of discovered ambassadors, because I joined this football team and the discipleship and the love had really helped me in my growth in faith. I just realized that football was such a key way to just reach so many people. And so I basically was looking for the next thing to do. And I went to a Christian festival and I heard about Ambassadors Football. And someone said to me, do you want to play football and tell people about Jesus? And I was thinking, yes, I'd love to do that. Loads of people would love to do that. And so the exact money I'd saved from working was the exact money to do the internship. And straight away, it's just one of those moments. I just knew I had to. I suppose when you look back sometimes, you think, why did I? But I just knew I had to. And so I joined Ambassadors, and I've done that since 2008. So it's been a long time. I've loved every second of it, despite the ups and downs. Just great to just follow Jesus, really, in the adventure.
That is such an encouraging story, Stephen. And I'm thinking particularly of parents out there who've maybe got teens that are wavering, maybe teens or young adult children who've walked away from faith. And yeah, that's a very encouraging story that, you know, especially if you've been raised in faith. I mean, we're hearing from the Quiet Revival, actually, of what many wonderful examples of people coming to faith who've had no church experience at all. But if you have been raised in faith, there's a sort of foundation, isn't there? There's a kind of knowledge there that I think must play into it. And just so evident as well how God's just been through it all. Like, I love that detail, small but very significant detail, that you had just the right amount of money for the internship. So a real concrete sign of affirmation, I suppose, at that critical point of your journey. So thank you. And I love as well with your story, very practical nature of your faith in terms of it being very relatable with your work. You know, I think that's the great thing about football, as we've already covered. It's obvious so many people absolutely adore, literally worship football, don't they? So if you can, I suppose that is the challenge, is how you could sort of, like, it's a wonderful thing, but obviously it's about putting Jesus first. There's something very, very practical and relatable about it as well. So thank you for sharing that. So coming back to your work again, and I'd like to come back to this business about the support raising that you do towards your salary. Now, I'm sure that Christian workers listening to this who are in a similar position to you will be absolutely fascinated to hear something of your experience of inviting generosity. How's that been? What insights can you share? Maybe you have some advice as well to encourage people listening.
Yeah, so when I joined in 2008, I was an intern, and then I joined as full-time staff. And I simply was told when I joined that I just need to write a good newsletter and ask for the money to come in. And so that's what I did. I had no training on kind of how to raise your own support. And that's how I started. And I suppose my experience of support raising has been a real journey, a bit like my faith journey. And since 2008, thankfully, it's got a lot better. So when I started, I had no training. I was told to write a newsletter and to pray it in. And it was a real struggle with Ambassadors. So Ambassadors Football in 2013 had a lot of deficit. And I remember so in October 2013, my first child was due to be born, and I was reduced to a 3-day week because the charity didn't have enough money to keep us on. And the CEO at the time just wrote a message basically saying, we don't have enough money. I know God's going to supply. I don't know how. Kind of, we'll see what happens. Thankfully, since then, God has really turned it around, and he kept us alive then. And in 2017, we had Miles Wilson, who wrote Funding the Family Business, which has now been revised as Personal Sport Matters. He came in and, in essence, did the stewardship training with us in person, which was amazing. And on that training, God just opened my eyes to to the beauty of support raising. Now, I know people listening to this might think, what is he talking about? But I really got the heart of support raising, that actually I don't have to do it. I get to do it. And the beauty of support raising is actually I see it as part of my work, as part of my discipleship. And actually the people I'm asking to come into partnership with me, and I get to partner with them. I get to walk life with them. They get to pray for me, and we get to do this journey together. So yeah, so he came in 2017. We had the training. And then since then, I just love it. I just loved every second of it. It's had its ups and downs. I get to partner with people so close. I've been best men at my partner's weddings. I've been to baptisms. I've just been able to walk life with these people that I've invited to partner with me. So it's just been a real joy, but it's been a real journey in that as well. And God has really, through the Bible training, through all the teaching, that God has really opened my eyes to it.
It's quite revolutionary, isn't it? Because your experience at the start, unfortunately, can be an all too common experience, and like opening your eyes to that kind of very sort of expansive idea of giving others the opportunity of being able to invite others into your ministry. And you talk about joy, and that joy cuts both ways, doesn't it? Because it's joy for the partners as well. I mean, maybe your partners aren't Christian workers themselves. They're probably not. They're doing whatever they're called to do, but quite possibly in a secular environment, and thinking, well, what's my purpose, God? You know, how do I fit into this? And this is one way in which they can be directly involved in sort of frontline ministry work. So yeah, it feels revolutionary, but I think that's what we've seen through our training. Once people have had the training, there's that sort of penny dropping moment where they're like, oh, right, it's actually completely the other way around from what I first thought. It's not about some heavy, awkward thing. It's a spirit-led thing, and it's an invitation to partner in joy together in your ministry. So that's absolutely wonderful. And because of all your experience, Ambassador Football has actually been, it was actually one of the small group of organisations who've helped us develop the linked worker account that I mentioned at the beginning, which is still quite new actually. And Ambassador Football helped us through your input, didn't they? You contributed your experience. And of course, I think Ambassadors Football were also then the first to use the service. So can you just explain a bit more about that? How does the linked worker account actually help Christian workers raise support towards their salary?
Yeah, so it's a real joy to be part of it. So the linked worker account for us, because all of our money gets paid from this like a central account, because we have a linked worker account, the money that's donated to us via our page goes straight into central, which is really helpful for all of our accounting. But more than that, what it allowed our staff to do, and allowed me to do, is have more, not control, but just more like care for my partners. So actually by having my own like page, which means I can update it and I can put photos and update it with my call and passion, it gives me that kind of that just the ability to update it and to share my calling. It also means that when people say yes to partnering with us, we can send them a really easy link that they can kind of click on and partner with us. And the great thing is it also allows us to see who has started, and it allows me to see it like really instantly, like next day. So it means that I can thank my partners, I can contact them, and the process just takes, in some ways, it allows smaller charities like ours, because we're quite a small charity, to take the pressure off like the admin and the office, and allow it for staff to really just care for their own partners, which is great, really.
And now you, in turn, you're now helping others in their support raising as well, aren't you? Can you please tell us a little bit more about that aspect of your work?
Yeah, so I'm part of an organisation called the Network Forum, and in 2018 we gathered as people who have roles in helping others raise personal support. We gathered in Germany. So we learned together, we worshiped together, and actually from those friendships that were formed in there, we actually help each other across Europe, which is really exciting. You have people who have a passion to help others in support raising, connecting across Europe. And what's really out from there is we've had a group come over from the Netherlands, and actually they helped us kind of work this MPD training in the UK, and we call it MPD UK training. And they do it in person, and they came over and showed us the first year. And the second year they came over and supported us. And the third year they kind of handed it over to us. And the great thing is this is like amongst a few organizations. So you have Agape and Ambassadors, the Navigators, Stewardship, Friends International, Fusion, Personal Support Matters, and Manna, all working together to help train people in MPD, we call it, but personal support raising. And it's great to be part of a network. And it's not about like one organization, it's about realizing, and this is all over kind of personal support, it's all about generosity. And actually, we're different organizations with different experiences, and we want to be generous to one another in the UK. So we partner together to help train. But then, bigger than that, as I said, we do it in Europe, and we want to be generous across Europe. We want to see other organizations who maybe struggle with personal support. We want to help build them up. And we even help new organizations who are kind of exploring how it works, how personal support is in the Bible, how they could use it in their organization. And I just love it because there's so many generous people across Europe, part of this network. And the Network Forum's now changed its name. It's now the Partnership Collective, but we're building upon just more across Europe, equipping the equippers who love personal support and want to see it grow in their organizations.
It sounds so exciting. And I just love the community aspect of it as well. So I can imagine sometimes as a Christian worker, hopefully you've got good support from your organization that you're working with, but I can imagine it's quite hard at times, and having that sense of community around you and that access to training, to network, and all the support, the resources that come with that must be amazing. And just to clarify, so MPD is Ministry Partner Development, right? Which is
Yes.
basically what you're calling the whole training around support raising. So wonderful. Now, I imagine that from all your years of support raising, that you have got some powerful stories of generosity to tell. I'm wondering if you've got one or two standout examples that you could share. I love hearing people's stories of generosity.
So that question, because sometimes when you think about generosity, some people think like the amount is what makes it powerful. And as I was reflecting it, and to me, it's not the amount, it's what drives that generosity that makes it powerful. And there's this one lady who has recently been on an Alpha course at our church, and she has come to faith in the last 3 months. And she was at our Alpha course, and she's getting baptized actually very soon. And I wanted to share her story. So I asked for a testimony so I could share it with my partners. So I send out newsletters and I update my partners about what's going on, about what God is doing. And so I said, look, can I send this out? And I wrote it out for her. And she said, yeah, please send it out. And she said, but if you send it out, please add me to your newsletter. So I added her to this newsletter. And actually in this newsletter, I don't often ask for money in my newsletter, but for this one, I had a follow-up to say, if you would like to consider giving, please do it here. And actually a day later, I worked out through my stewardship account, she'd actually given straight away. And so I kind of followed up and I said, look, I didn't add you to that newsletter because I wanted to ask you. But she just replied, look, Steve, like God's changed my life. And I just couldn't believe what you're doing, how amazing it was. And I just wanted to give and be part of it. And that just, her generosity like blew me away because you can just see all along an Alpha, and now you can just see God changing her little by little. And it's just been amazing to see. So that's really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. So inspiring. You've got another story.
Yeah, I've got another one.
Brilliant. Great.
This story's from the first person I asked after my training. And this is a couple, and I had to ring them. And so anyone that's been on any personal support training, you're encouraged to ring. And I had to ring these people first. And I was so nervous. I plucked up the courage. I rang them. They said yes to meeting. We met and I asked them, and this was way back in 2017. This couple are probably the most generous couple I know. They're always willing to host people. They're always willing to give their time. And I've just walked this amazing journey with them both. So the husband is now actually a trustee for Ambassadors. So he's been on this long-term journey with us since I first asked him. Then he started volunteering, and now he's a trustee for us. And we're such good friends. And we go out, we walk together, we pray together, and that's really exciting. And then his wife, she also volunteers for us, but she also works in a local school. And because of our partnership, I've been invited into that school to help at the Christian Union. So now I get to partner with her going into her school. And it's just amazing. Like these two have been so powerful in my life. And it's just amazing. It's all just birthed out of generosity. In reality, it came from me ringing in a really nervous moment, asking them. And that has just opened this amazing door to this relationship. So it's been really exciting.
Just wonderful. I could listen to these stories all day. So we've inevitably, because of your work and this support raising that we've been delving into, we've talked quite a lot, haven't we, about about receiving. And I'm just guessing that, especially, if you are in your position where you are literally having to raise your salary, that it's not always easy to give yourself as well. Do you think both are important? And how would you say generosity, sort of both ways, giving and receiving, has developed your faith along the way?
Yeah, so I think it's actually easier to give once you've really got into this. So most people that come on like courses or I speak to, even like the stewardship course and the MPD UK training course, is actually they go away challenged about their own giving first,
I love that. Yeah.
because we look at the biblical truths, and the main biblical truth like is simple, is that is the earth is God's. Everything we have is God's. It's not about, it's more than a tithe, it's everything. Our houses, everything that we have is God's. And so when we start teaching that truth, people start realizing that if we're going to ask people to give to us, then actually we need to be givers ourselves. So yeah, most people walk away thinking, actually, how can I give more? Which is just really, really powerful. Like, I love that. In God's words, as I was reflecting on like Matthew 6, it says, when you give, and then he says, when you pray and when you fast. It's one of those things that Jesus expects from us, is that he wants us to be givers. And I think by giving, when you give, you hand over control to God, especially when you give and it's difficult, because like giving in any situation, you're saying to God, look, I trust you more than I trust myself. And I think when we give to God and we give to charities or churches or the homeless or any of those moments, we're saying, God, this is not mine, this is yours. And I want to use it for your glory, not my glory. So I just love the bit when we see people just in their own transformation of giving. And even for me, over years, my giving has completely transformed because of this training and what God has done and through it.
You described that so beautifully, Stephen.
Good.
Perfect. Just, yeah, really, really special. And really, what you're talking about is the heart, isn't it? It's how God gets hold of our hearts. Once we say, okay, I'm yours, he gets hold of our hearts and slowly but surely changes us. And then you just step into a whole new world that, before you couldn't even really imagine, right? And it just takes it way beyond any kind of transactional feeling around giving. And I think that's the challenge, right? It can feel like that, whether it's giving or receiving. I mean, particularly thinking about your situation with support raising, that, frankly, quite awkward thing. It can feel awkward, like, oh, I have to talk about money. I have to not just talk about it, I have to ask as well. And then once you step into this, as I described before, as a sort of expansive view of generosity, it's like God gives you his lenses for a moment and you're suddenly like, well, okay, it's not about like something hard and difficult. It's not that there aren't challenges as well, of course. It's not there aren't ups and downs as well, but it's about this heart, isn't it? And the joy that comes with it. So thank you for sharing that so poignantly. That is really, really beautiful. And of course, really it's that kind of discipleship piece that our generosity report that we've now published for the third time, the third one most recently, that's what that's really about. We're trying to, it helps us too, yes, but we're also trying to help the many Christian workers like yourself, charities and churches that we work with. We're trying to equip them to be able to fight and grow generosity more confidently. I'd love to know, I think you've had a chance to have a little look. There were 8 findings in this year's report. Was there one that stood out to you? And if so, why?
Yeah, so I love there was an additional question you asked this year, which was about if people were planning to kind of increase or decrease their giving next year. And I just found that it's always a really fascinating question to ask. And the report, it said that the young and the ethnic minorities were the ones that were more likely to increase. And I just found that just a fascinating, I just found it surprising in some ways. Maybe I shouldn't find it surprising. But I found it surprising to think actually, sometimes when I speak to people, they're like, oh, actually, I need to ask the older people to support raise because they get it more. But actually, in some ways, when we look into ask the young, and even in fact, the next, I think point 7 was about how people are more open, the younger generation are more open to be taught on giving and generosity. And actually by asking, like in my position as someone who's asking people, if I'm asking the younger people, not only am I like asking them to ask God, but also I'm in some ways opening that door to the teaching of generosity. So it was really encouraging to read and surprising. I love the report because it gives us like a kind of an insight into what people are thinking. And in some ways, I love the stewardship's heart, which is basically if everyone was generous, if everyone was really generous and opened up to everything, then the damage it could do for the kingdom would be incredible. And so that's why I love the report. It gives us exciting things about how we can teach people, how we can grow generosity in churches, and I'm excited to see churches use them. We, as ambassadors, actually, we've just sent this out to all the staff, and so all the staff are now going to be a chance to take it away, read it, and we're going to look at it together and discuss like what surprises us as staff as well, which is great.
I didn't know that. That's very good to hear. And for the benefit of our listeners who haven't heard about it, I'll make sure we include a link in the show notes as well. Yeah, thank you for sharing your reflections. That's really helpful feedback for us as well. Our conversation is drawing to a close. So I always like to ask my guests, you've already mentioned a couple of really helpful Bible verses. I'd like to know which is your favourite, maybe one you've already mentioned or another one.
So when it comes to generosity, my favourite is actually Acts 4. And it's from 32 down. And it basically, the title is Believers Share Their Possessions. And it basically talks about how there's no one needy among them. And it basically then talks about with great power, the apostles continue to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And it's like, there was no one needy among them. And then they shared the gospel. And I just love that. To me, it's like a circular motion. If we get generosity right, and we're generous to people within our church, there's no needy people in our church or around us. People then are like on fire then to share the gospel. And then in some ways that takes us back round again. And so I just love that verse in Acts 4 about how it just talks about everyone shared their possessions. There was no one in need. People were selling farms and fields and giving it to the mission. And to me, that is just really exciting and a really beautiful picture of generosity.
Stephen, thank you so much for all that you've shared today. Before we do finally wrap, how can we be praying for you on your journey of generosity in this season?
Yeah, thank you. My biggest prayer is, because I teach on generosity, is that I remain in the truth of the Bible, and that when we teach people on partnership and development, that actually we're teaching in the truth of what God says. So the prayer for that would be amazing as we continue it. And we'd love to see generosity grow in churches, in organizations across the UK and into Europe. We want to see the church move with power, like a bit like the quiet revival we're seeing it move. And we'd love to see it move with generosity as well, that churches open up and generosity is just flooding out from the churches across the UK.
Stephen, thank you. We'll certainly add those prayer points to the show notes, and we'll be praying for you on those as well. It's been fascinating to hear your insights on generosity, particularly with your perspective as a Christian worker. And to our listeners, thank you as always for joining us. Please do see the show notes for links related to our conversation and for info too on how to join in with 40 Acts. We didn't mention that in this episode, but that is our generosity challenge for Lent, and it's definitely not too late to join in. We're also running a separate mini podcast series to encourage and inspire you along the way. So check that out as well. And please do keep sharing this podcast with others and take a moment to leave us a review. Until next month, goodbye. Goodbye, Stephen.